Hello, I'm Dr. Angie McCartney.
And I'm Ruth McCartney.
Welcome to TeaFlix,
where each episode's intimate conversation features a fascinating guest across the spectrum of Beatles world, pop culture, Grammy winners, the music industry, chefs, producers, music stars, actors, and more. So bottoms up and join us as they spill the tea on TeaFlix. And it says we are live once again.
Oh, you speak for yourself. Yeah, I'm fairly live, I think. Yeah,
you're looking good.
Oh, thank you.
Spring has sprung all over your blouse.
Oh, the sun has risen. I wonder where the Boydies is. Some say the Boyd is on the wing, but that's a Zoid. The wing is on the Boyd.
Exactly.
Okay. Whether you wanted poetry or not, there you have it.
And you'll get a limerick later for our special guest. So thanks for joining us, kids, once you all start jumping on.
Hello, folks.
So today we are extremely honored to have a bona fide rock star in our midst. Steve Postell is a versatile singer, songwriter, guitarist, composer, and producer based in Los Angeles. He's also a learned musician. He knows what notes are called and what chords are called and everything. So he's way ahead of me. Steve's a seasoned veteran of the music industry. He's collaborated with legends such as David Crosby, Eric Johnson, Jennifer Warnes, Robin Ford, and John Oates. Postell is a member of the immediate family, just because he hasn't quite got enough to do. A super group of renowned session musicians, including Waddy Wachtel, Danny Korchmar, a.k.a. Cooch, Leland Sklar, and Russ Kunkel on drums. And beyond Steve's touring and recording work, he's an accomplished solo artist with several albums to his name, which blend blues, rock, folk, and roots influences. Known for his soulful guitar playing and insightful lyrics, Steve also contributes to film scores, commercial projects, and music education, making him a well-rounded force in contemporary music. His new album, Walking Through These Blues, is out now on Quarto Valley Records, and he's somewhere in the studio. I'm sure there's an open suitcase as he's heading back out on the road again this week with Our House, a fabulous group of musicians, and an evening of the music of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Mm-hmm. And without further ado, from one of the Del Reys, we welcome our neighbor, Steve Postell. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me. I guess we could almost go outside and just yell and we'd hear each other.
We could.
Exactly. Yeah, we just found out we're neighbors, so
yes.
we'll have to have a coffee and chew the fat over other things.
Well, now, Steve, you've played with some of the most iconic names in music, haven't you? The list Ruth just read. Is there any particular moment that stands out in your musical career?
Oh, wow.
That's a big question.
That's a big question. Particular moment, I think it all becomes one big moment in the end, when you get a little older. There are relationships like the one with David Crosby that and the immediate family guys that are very potent in the story of Steve.
Yeah.
But it goes so far back, and the anecdotes and I should be writing a book and will someday.
Well, we can help you with that. Whenever you're ready, you definitely should be writing a book. So you're headed out on tour literally again tomorrow for another leg of the tour with Our House. Yeah. Tell the kids the story of how, when sadly David passed right before the tour, where you were musical director and put it all together with the band and Jeff Pevar and his son James. I hear that you decided to honor the Libero Theater Santa Barbara concert as a tribute, and sort of, if you hadn't done that, maybe Our House wouldn't exist. How did that all come about?
It definitely wouldn't exist. Well, we were, as you said, we David and we put the band together. Me and James, his son James Raymond, were the sort of co-musical directors, and David wanted to go out and do a tour, and he wanted to open up the set list a little bit to a little bit more of the CSNY catalog. The last few years he'd been doing really centered on David Crosby solo material, and he said, I miss playing wooden ships and so on.
Yeah.
And also the other thing that happened was that because David was having some problems with his hands and had some surgery, one thing led to another, and due to my somewhat, I think, my suggestion that maybe I should play the guitar parts or could, And he took me up on that. So he taught me all the guitar parts.
Wow.
And so that he could just, we spent a weekend at his place with me filming him doing them. So,
Wow.
Which was quite an honor, of course.
Yeah.
No kidding.
And so we put the whole show together. We had the set list, we had the band, we rehearsed the songs, and we were on the phone talking about whether we should record the first night or the second night, and just getting ready.
Right.
And he just passed away the next day.
Oh,
What a shock.
sad.
We all know, obviously, he'd had, health problems and transplants and so on. But I think none of us, especially you guys, after having discovered he had a son later in life, that must have just been an absolute gut punch.
Oh, it was one of those bizarre, because both James and I had spoken to him at length the day before.
Oh,
there was no sign of just one of those things. And anyway, so what happened was we had the first show of what would have been, hopefully, what it would have been touring was the 100th anniversary celebration of the Libero Theater in Santa Barbara.
beautiful place.
And we couldn't, obviously that got canceled, but that had sold out in 3 hours.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So about 6 or 7 months later, James and I decided we should do that concert while it's still the 100th anniversary year of the Libero.
Yeah.
We should use the same band, and we should do the same set list.
Yep.
Yeah.
And invite special guests. So we invited, let me see, Sean Colvin, Colin Hay, Richard Page played.
Wow.
And Chris Stills played, and Nathaniel McEwen played, and it was a beautiful night, great success, and it did lead to some people reaching out to me and saying, you should really take this on the road. People would love to see it, and so I gave that a bunch of thought. And this is our second tour, and it feels good to do it. For part of it is that, particularly like Jeff Pevar played him for 28 years and learned at his feet, and he taught me the guitar parts. It just feels like we're
meant to do it.
Yeah.
meant to do it, and sort of honoring this amazing legacy in as authentic way as we can.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
it.
no, I think it's wonderful that the music lives on. That, I mean, it's some of my personal favorite music, and I always, obviously, because of our last name, everybody's always focused on the 60s, right? And it was undoubtedly a great decade. But my personal favorite music growing up is I think the 70s was an amazing decade for singer-songwriters and real songs, and I think it's really kind of overlooked by pop culture.
It might be. I mean, fortunately, like the movie they made about our band, Immediate Family, really, where they interviewed Neil Young and James Taylor and Carole King and all these wonderful
Linda
Ross. That film really highlighted how special that era was. The music that got made between, I'd say, 69 and 78.
Yep.
Something like that. There was a close to a 10-year span where, of course, the 60s were powerfully important because of the Beatles and the Stones and Hendrix and so on.
Yeah.
70s really produced so much amazing music.
Yeah,
real
music.
Yeah, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, Linda Ronstadt, like you said, all of those guys.
I Stevie Wonder and and on. So.
Yeah, I think, working with a director like Denny Tedesco, who I've known Denny 35, 40 years.
Probably, yeah.
And he has got, because of his dad, Tommy Tedesco, being, in the Wrecking Crew and playing on almost as many records as Leland, but he's got a real sense of the historical wrapper around the timing of any given decade of music and whatever. So how was it shooting that film? Did it get in the way of your day-to-day studio stuff? Were they a fly on the wall? Or
they were great about it, but also it was strange because when we decided, so Denny got approached, he met with Danny Korchmar and and realized that this would be the perfect. He didn't know we had a band called the Immediate Family, and he realized that he was trying to figure out what he should do next. You know, the Wrecking Crew is a wonderful documentary, won awards.
Absolutely.
Where do you go from there? What's his next film going to be? And it was so perfect for him and for us because my 4 bandmates really were the heart of the community that took over from the Wrecking Crew.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Russel Kamp, you know, the credits are astounding, and Lea, you know, all of them. Cooch, I mean, and the songs that Cooch wrote for Don Henley and with Don Henley.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't seen it, it's called the Immediate Family, immediatefamilyfilm.com. You should definitely go and check it out. And they have screenings and Q&As all over the country.
Yes.
But it's one of my go-tos. If I
watch
had
it
a crap
again and
week,
again.
I watch it over and over and over because you
I
always
do too.
find something different, a little nuance in, you know, what Carole King says or what Ronstadt says or whatever.
Tell you what I wondered about now, your new album, Walking Through These Blues. And that's on Quarto Valley Records, isn't it?
Quarto Valley Records, yeah.
Yeah.
And
tell us about the tracks and how they all came to be.
And why it took 4 years.
Well, 2 questions. I'll answer the first one. Out of deference to your mom, I answer her question first.
Okay.
It came to be because I'm sort of an old school writer in that I'm always working on music. And from my first record till now, basically when I go, hey, I've got 14 songs that I like, it's time to make a record.
Yeah.
That's really, sometimes I've had a label, this time I did, sometimes I don't. I still make a record. I've always, as you can see, I've always had a recording studio from the very beginning. So I never had to wait until a recording studio was affordable or available to make a record.
Right.
So I basically make records. I still believe in the format of 10 to 13 songs, whatever.
Yep.
I like that. I like the story that it tells about where you are in your life. And I grew up on, you know, getting those records, getting that first Beatles record or the first Hendrix record. It was a magical thing. And I sort of feel the same way about making a record. But so now why it took so long was because I started the record. I had a group of songs. I like to have like 3 or 4 more than what I'm going to put on a record, because some of them come up, you know, you never know what's going to happen. And I was at that point, I started recording it, and I was well into it, and COVID hit.
Oh.
And for someone like me who has a nice career, but I'm not a household name. I mean, the Stones could put out a record and not tour, but if I'm not out there playing and talking to people about what I'm doing, it didn't make sense to put out the record. So we decided, I mean, we did put out a version of it in Japan, but they didn't expect me to be there anyway. They just, you know,
right.
But so it gave me an opportunity to really take my time, which meant a few things. One, it meant if there was someone I wanted on the record who may not be available that week, well, when you back off tour? Oh, I'm back in 6 weeks. Great, come in then. Yeah. So that's how I got so many great people on it. I also got to write some more. I got to mix it a million times, you know. Now, when COVID sort of eased up a bit and we all started playing again, which was about 2 years later, right then the Immediate Family put out a record. So I was not about to compete with my own self, my own band.
Right.
So then I waited some more, and then I wrote a couple more things. I mean, one of the songs, the song I wrote with Glenn Phillips from Toad the Wet Sprocket, it would never have been on the record because we just wrote it right before I put this record out and recorded it. So it actually was interesting to have a record that I had no time limit on working on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. My husband Martin is also a musician, and he's doing a triptych or a trilogy. And it'll be 10 years or 12 years in the making by the time it's all out. So I think good things come to those who wait. Now, one of the people who was actually, he worked with her many years ago on one of his projects, that I heard you talk about was Delaney and Bonnie's fabulously talented daughter, Becca Bramlett. How did you get her on the project, or have you just known her for many years?
Years ago, a lot of years ago now, maybe 20 years ago, I was doing a big festival in Colorado. It's called Jazz Aspen. It's a big rock festival. It's not, I don't know why they call it Jazz Aspen, but it's a rock festival. And my band at the time, Little Blue, was playing. And it was a big enough, we said, let's get a special guest or two. And I knew a guy named Tommy Byrne, who was Billy Joel's longtime guitar player. I said, Tommy, come out and be our special guest. And he said, I work with this amazing singer named Becca Bramlett. I said, you mean the daughter of Bonnie and Delaney? I said, bring her out. We got the budget. We'll fly you guys out.
Great.
And she killed it. I mean, I had never heard her before. Big audience, big festival. She just took over. She's a force.
She is.
And in this case, I wrote this one song called Buried Stone, and I'll write a song, and maybe even after I start recording it, I'll start to let the song dictate to me who's on it, what the arrangement should be like. I'll let the song tell me. And that song was saying, you need this to be a dialogue with a really bluesy, great female singer.
Okay.
And I said, I know one of those. And Becca said yes. So
that's fantastic. I'm so glad she is, still of her voice and in her force, because she's just truly she's a true artist. I mean,
she's fantastic.
She's, the progeny of artists. So it should be no surprise. But when she opens her mouth, it's like the world changes for a few minutes. She's just amazing. So as a solo artist on the one hand, and then part of Our House and immediate family, how do you spiritually find time to know when it's the right time to balance between which project you're working on, or are you the victim of other people's calendars, or how do you say yes or no and balance things like that?
Well, most musicians try to say yes a lot, because we always feel like it's our last gig. Like, what if no one ever calls me again?
I know.
Which is funny, because I did have that experience in my. I'll just backtrack for a second. I used to play Broadway shows when I was quite younger, and I did that for about 7 years, either on Broadway, off Broadway, or even on tour. And after about 7 years, I just felt, unless I want to be a Broadway pit guy, I just have to stop doing this, because they'll keep calling me, and it's a lot of. So I decided to end that chapter, and I turned down 2 more offers, and I never got called again.
Wow.
like they're like, okay, great, well, because all the other guys want those gigs, we'll give it to them. But I mean, first of all, I don't have a lot of other things that I do. I'm not in a golf club, or I don't have kids. I have a lot of time to focus on music, which I've just always done. And you just balance it. You just you see when one tour ends, and then so you're busy that time. I remember talking to Warren Haynes, a friend of mine, when he was in the Allman Brothers,
right?
And he also had his own band, right. And they got the 2 management together, and they just said, look, he said, I'm not quitting either thing. I'm certainly not giving up my own band. So the management got together and said, okay, let's look at our calendars, and Allman Brothers is play this month, and then the band will play this month. And
Yeah.
And so with the immediate family, obviously that having that record out at the same time that you were writing Walking Through These Blues, that would have just sort of self-regulated that, like you said, you're not going to release a solo record. You don't want to, as we say in this house, accidentally glue yourself to yourself and meet yourself coming back in the hallway going, what are you doing here? Right. So I imagine. So now how long will Our House be on this tour? You're out for a couple of months, right?
No, it's a little less than a month this time. Yeah.
Oh, is it? But you're going to the wonderful, our friend Ron Ernesti, you're going to the wonderful Arcada Theater in St. Charles, Illinois, right?
Have you
Yes.
played there before?
Oh,
Yes, yeah, we did. Yeah.
We
Yeah, it's
absolutely
great, isn't
love that place. Have you been up to the Speakeasy on the top floor, the Speakeasy restaurant?
Oh,
Oh,
So if that is still in business, which I sincerely hope it is,
Yeah.
Ron, his mother passed away the week before we did our Magical History tour as part of the Liverpool Legends Fabulous Marty Scott Beatles show. So we came on as special guests to do sort of, while they got changed, we tell the stories and do, video thing about the Beatles in the 60s and what have you. And Ron's mother had passed away, I think the week before. He'd been to her funeral that day. And so he clung on to Ange like, the mummy figure. And he took us upstairs with Antonia Bennett, our friend Antonia, Tony's daughter. She was playing up there, and it's a club. And the place is like a 1920s speakeasy, and it's filled with his mom's, you're eating off his mom's china, you're drinking out of her old martini glasses, and he's got her crystal collection in one room and whatever. So I sincerely hope the speakeasy above the Arcada survived COVID. So when you go there, even if it's during the day on soundcheck, ask for the tour, because it's just
it really is one of those, a bookcase opens a little, who sent you,
Yeah,
and you have to have a password to get in.
Yeah,
And all the waitresses are dressed as flappers.
1920s
The
French dress.
atmosphere is terrific. It
Yeah.
really is. Yeah.
So knock 3 times and tell Ron we sent you.
Yeah. Now, I tell you what I like to know. What were your earliest musical influences, or who?
Well, the main two, I'd say 3 in a way. The first musical influence that I had really was walking through Central Park with my mom and some guy playing the guitar on the Great Lawn, and it just blew my mind. I was about 4 or 5, and I'd never seen anyone play the guitar, and I just, maybe, who knows, past life, I don't know what it was. So I kept talking about it to my parents. He was playing this guitar, and it was so they took me to see Segovia.
Oh.
So I was still probably 5, and at Town Hall or Carnegie Hall, and just again, it really blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. It was so exceptionally beautiful to me.
Yeah.
And of course, Segovia transcribed a lot of Bach and Scarlatti and some really beautiful, and the Spanish guys like who wrote for the guitar, Fernando Sor and so forth.
Yes.
But that was a big impact. And then the biggest impact on me, which you probably will not be surprised, was that my parents called me into their room where the one television, the black and white TV was, and I watched the Ed Sullivan Show.
On the 9th of February, 1964, when the world stopped turning for a minute.
Yeah.
And like many people my age, I guess I was probably 6 or whatever, 6 or 7. That changed my life. I already loved the guitar.
Right.
Hadn't seen electric guitar yet. I already loved music and songs because of these records my mom had. But seeing that was, it really, I don't think after that there was ever anything else that I wanted to do.
Wow. So it was really that deep and immediate for you.
It was absolutely, that was it.
Yeah. Wow. But you are, as I said in the intro, you are a learned musician. So at that point, you're 6 or 7. Did you have to cajole your parents to study music and go to music and get an instrument, whatever?
Yeah, I cajoled them. I think they always planned on it, but they were told by someone I was too small, which I don't believe I was, but that they had to wait a couple of years. So they waited till I was 8, and they found a teacher, and I really wish I could find out how they found him. My mom's passed now, so I don't know. But they found this wonderful teacher, and he went down to Manny's Music Store with me, and on West 48th Street, and he bought a Goya G10 classical guitar, which hangs on my wall to this day.
Oh, how lovely.
And so I started, and fortunately, luckily for me, this fellow, Richard Neves, or Nieves, as he was actually pronounced, taught me from day one how how to read,
Mm-hmm.
some flamenco, some classical, a folk song. First day we learned "Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley," because I already like to sing. Taught me the chords. So I always, from the first day, all of that was integrated for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it wasn't a separate, singing wasn't separate than the guitar, and reading wasn't separate from and chords weren't weird. So I owe him a great debt because it suited me very, very well. Also, my curiosity and what I wanted to know.
That's fun. Well, you clearly have a musical brain, musical talent. You know, there are mathematicians and there are STEM people and there are artists and there are musicians. So, you know, thank God that you found yourself in the right place of the universe at the right time with the right people. And that seems to have followed you in your career, doesn't it? I mean, from, you know, all the way to the immediate family. How did you integrate with those guys? Because you've all lived on the road such separate lives. How did the immediate family come together and decide to be a band?
Mm-hmm.
Well, those guys, by the one thing was that first of all they're all older than me, between say 8 and 10 years older than me,
Right?
and they were all on the West Coast. I was on the East, and I was on the East Coast. I was in New York. So one thing that our industry goes through cycles. They really were the part of this small group of musicians who sort of took over the record making that was going on. And there's others, there's a couple of the drummers and a couple of the bass players. But it was a small group of guys who got called for every record that was being made.
Right.
So on the East Coast, by the time I was just a few years later getting into being a professional musician, most of the records, or a lot of them, were being made by these guys.
Right.
Whether it was, and so what we being me and my fellow musicians my age, we ended up doing a lot of the more commercial music. We did film scores and TV scores and commercials and Broadway shows, and sessions and some records. But the big records, they kind of cornered that market. I feel like.
Right.
So anyway, but along the way, I always had a band, and I always was writing and making. Got a record deal early on with someone named Sid Bernstein.
Oh yes.
Oh.
Who was the promoter who actually brought the Beatles to Shea Stadium, as I'm sure you know.
That's right. Yeah.
So he was my first manager, and he got me a deal, and
wow.
So that was always going on at the same time. In terms of, eventually I finally moved out to LA. It became clear to me that to do what I wanted to do and be around the people I wanted to be around in this business, this is where I had to be.
Right.
And I got very fortunate. Things fell into place as they, again, you talked about timing, place.
Yep.
I did a session with Tom Petty's drummer, the Heartbreaker drummer, Steve Ferroni.
Yep.
I called him. I said, I'm going to be in LA producing this girl. Do you want to play drums? I hear you have a studio. And it was a really nice studio. And it was him and a Grammy-nominated, Grammy Award-winning engineer, and him at this nice building. It was set up as a great studio. But then there was a room that was filled with boxes and stuff. And I went back to where I was living in Colorado, and I called Steve, and I said, what are you doing with that empty room? And I'll never forget, he goes, I thought you'd never ask.
Oh, great.
A month later, I was living in LA and moved my equipment into that studio.
Wow.
Called Drumroll in Burbank. So once I was here, especially because I walked into the studio with Steve Ferroni and John Jones, and a week later we were doing sessions with people and meeting everybody.
Wow.
You just do meet. It's not that big of a world.
No.
So over the years, I met Leland probably first, and started using him on sessions, and Waddy played on a record, and Russ we did a video with me, Russ, and Leland, and the one I hadn't met was Danny Kortchmar, who interestingly enough was of all of them, they were all influential to me, but he was the most influential to me because he's a guitar player, he's a producer, he's a songwriter, he played with James. It was I just really felt an affinity with Danny. Yeah. And I was making a record for Emergent Records, it was called, and the guy who was mixing it was Nathaniel Kunkel, who's Russ's son, wonderful mixer. And Nathaniel called me up. We were still working on it. He said, I'm recording a show at the Troubadour tonight, and I think you'd really enjoy it. You should come out. It's Carole King and James Taylor with their original band.
Wow.
Playing the 50th anniversary of their show at the Troubadour.
Sign me up.
So I went, and that's when I met Danny.
Oh.
And we really hit it off. We had a funny experience. Actually, he started coming to LA. We started to, but the first time we ever played together, we had a mutual friend. It was he came out for New Year's Eve, and we went to this New Year's Eve party. And of course, the people were like, "You two guys play guitar for us. We have two guitars here." So Danny and I sat down and we played for 45 minutes. Some blues, some James Taylor music, a bunch of stuff. And
right.
And Danny looked at me after. He says, "Man, that's like we've been playing together our whole lives." And I said, "Danny, we have. I've played to your guitar parts my whole life."
Oh, wow!
So we stayed in touch, and when he come to LA, we were writing, we were recording. He was playing shows with me, and eventually, we got a gig. He got a gig he got a gig with the Section, which was. Was the band that was backing James Taylor and Jackson Browne.
Right.
They offered the Section a reunion tour in Japan. They decided the timing wasn't right for them, and Danny, we were just sitting right here in the studio. He said, "Yeah, I said, "What's going on with the Section?" He said, "We're gonna turn it down. We don't." And I just went, "Danny, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's put something else together. They just want you. Let's put something called Danny Kortchmar and Friends together."
Right.
So we went to Japan with different guys. We had from Jackson Browne's band, we had the late Jeff Young and Bob Glaub and Steve Hawley from Wing, who was with Wings.
Sure. Yeah.
And we had a wonderful time. And Danny solidified a record deal with a Japanese label to sort of do his versions of his hits with him singing.
Wow. Okay.
And so we came back.
The audience who don't know is most of everything off Building the Perfect Beast, the Don Henley record. And then
a lot of James Taylor songs and Jackson Browne songs and a lot, he's written a lot of big songs. Yep. So we came in the studio here and we did a bunch of pre-production. And then Jackson was kind enough to open up his studio. We went in there to cut basics, and Danny called Russ Kunkel and Leland Sklar and Waddy Wachtel. And we also had a wonderful player named Jim Cox on keyboards. And so we went in, we cut the basics there.
Wow.
And it was really organic. It was really like, wow, we just know how to play together.
Right.
And the second day, Danny looked around at us and he goes, "Wow, this is my immediate family."
Oh, there you go.
And next thing you know, we were making our own record and we were going to Japan to play. And that's how it started.
Wow, it's kind of like the happenstance of your musical universe. It seems to have all just coagulated, in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
It does, and you also have to. A teacher of mine once said you have to create the conditions for things to happen. So, like when I got invited to the Troubadour, part of me was like, "Oh, it's going to be packed. Do I really want to go? I got to park." And I just made myself go, and that became the immediate family. That one trip that So you also have to show up. Showing up is a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting out of your house is definitely recommended in this industry, right? And we always say, it's funny, the things you really don't want to go to,
you're like, always have a great time.
They always turn out to be the one that,
we've been to so many events that we think,
Oh.
will have to show up. They'll be disappointed.
And it's always
and
fabulous.
don't want to go and always have a whale of a time. It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, funny how that works.
So now, with decades in the industry, have you seen the role of musicians evolve, especially with today's digital doodads?
I very much so. I mean, what I love and continue to aspire to is seasoned musicians who've put in their 100,000 hours, not the 10,000 Malcolm Gladwell says, the 100,000 hours, perfect our craft and making real music in whether on stage or in the studio. So that's the world I live in.
Yeah.
I also have to say that as a curious person and as a person who has a studio, and I love technology, use it to the best of my abilities and try to keep up on it.
Yeah.
But I think I use it informed from the old way. Like even when I'm on a digital platform,
right,
I'm thinking the same way I thought when 2 reels of tape were rolling around.
Yeah, it's like one of our dearest, oldest friends is Nico Bolas. You probably know Nico.
Well, he mixes all our records.
Right. And so, he and his brother Mark, who's also a brainiac, they have come up through analog and tapes and tape loops and pencils taped to the back of chairs. And when I made my one and only record, Nico flew to Munich to mix it. And he blew the Germans' minds because they were like, well, why do you need 2 pencils and a roll of gaffer tape? Well, watch. So, now that we have Atmos, we had 5.1 and now we have Atmos. The challenge, I think, is still using all of that old analog knowledge in digital ways, but still making it feel warm like a record. So it doesn't feel like it's just been shoved through some digital AI ringer and come out the other end.
For sure. I mean, I had an interesting experience with sort of that. I mean, I know this, but that highlighted it. I was having a tooth pulled, and the guy gave me what is it? Laughing gas, whatever that is, nitrous
oxide,
yeah. Which I'd never had before, actually. And I said, well, why not? I don't do drugs, and I'd love to feel that, So I was pretty having, I don't drink, I don't do anything. So any substance in me is going to, hit my brain.
Yeah.
I was pretty happy and waiting for him. And he had a satellite radio station on. It was sort of a modern country station. So, which is sort of modern pop music, countryish. So they play like 3 or 4 songs that are new. Then they'd play an old Fleetwood Mac song. Then 3 or 4 songs. Then a Dolly Parton song. And it was so dramatic because the new songs, one, they all sounded exactly the same. They were all squashed exactly with compression, so there's no dynamics.
Right.
Everything was exactly placed rhythmically. Everything was tuned to the exact note. No heart. Couldn't feel anything. And then Fleetwood Mac would come on, and you'd be like, "Oh, what a relief!"
Yeah. A slight sharp or flat or make Fleetwood's shuffle might be, 1/100th of an 18th of a beat ahead, or it's all I feel sorry for kids growing up these days who haven't trained ears to be able to hear for the difference between organic. It's like a palate, right? You can taste organic food, you can taste food made with love, or you can taste drive-through food. And to me, being a big foodie and working with a lot of chefs, when I listen to stuff like you're talking about, it's like the difference between a home-cooked meal and something in a box that's been warmed up and shoved on an airplane.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. And so when you ask me what the difference is, I think that, here's another example, which is that the access to learning things has never been like it is now.
That's true.
You can, so there's these brilliant technically kids at 7, 8 years old playing rings around anything in terms technically that we could have ever. I'm playing at speeds we could never, think about. And but that's because they can watch YouTube videos
That's
all day long, and
Yeah.
which is great. But what it doesn't teach you is heart and soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you have this technical proficiency. As a matter of fact, I had a student. I don't teach a lot, but when I do try to teach a little bit still, and someone won a prize, and the prize was a guitar lesson with Steve Postell.
Wow.
So he came in, and he was right out of either, I don't know if it was Berkeley or Guitar Institute of Technology, but he was right out of one of these music schools, and the kid he play probably twice as fast. And I'm not slow, but I mean, he did all this stuff, and he was
Wow.
And but it was all very technical. And I said to him, I said, well, let's figure something out. I said, what's a song? Think of a song, an older song that you know the melody really well. And he said, and we just can't let it be. Okay.
Sure.
I said, okay, play that melody. Couldn't do it.
What?
No.
Why? How?
Because he never translated all this technical stuff into internally where a melody could come through his fingers.
Wow.
Oh.
So fortunately, we trained. We worked on it, and he became a much better, really great musician. But
Wow.
So the technical access to learning has never been what it is. We had to take a record, put it on, put the needle on, listen for 5 seconds, take it off, learn those 5 seconds.
And smell the ink on the print on the vinyl insert and the poster I miss the smell of records almost as much as I miss the sound.
That's funny.
You'd save up your pocket money and you'd go and buy mine was Carole King Tapestry. I saved up for that album and I bought it and slit it open very carefully because I wanted to keep the cover in the plastic and and then reading all the lyrics and listening along and then playing it again. And kids, I guess, don't know that if you leave the arm back on the turntable, it'll just lift itself up and play itself again. I mean, that was just something the cool kids did at parties, right? It's such an honor to talk to somebody as you're so accomplished and so humble as yourself. It's really been such a pleasure spending time with you. Please tell the people watching where they can find you, or if there's anything else we didn't ask you, if we forgot to ask you that you want to talk about. Hey, now is the time, and toot your own horn because you're very sweet and very quiet and very humble, and I want to make a big noise for Steve Postell.
Well, we're literally tomorrow morning heading back out on tour. You can find the dates on something called Bands in Town /Our House. Has these dates, and then we're putting together Steve Postell shows, which will happen throughout the summer. Then there's more Our House. There's another immediate family record coming out that Nico and myself and Waddy have to mix.
Great. Oh God, Nico and Waddy in the same room.
No, we have a great time. The three of us kind of do that part of the process with the band, and we decided that we had these two really nice records of new music we've all written in the last 6-7 years, but for the band. And we said, we haven't recorded the hits,
Wow.
and we play them our own way. So we got in the studio in here and we recorded 11 amazing songs that I mentioned before, and whether all of them, Somebody's Baby and New York Minute and Shaky Town and so on and so forth.
Amazing.
And so when I get back off this tour, one of my next projects is to get that ready for Nico to start mixing. So that's fun.
Great. Well, you probably are not aware, but our regular viewers will know that the Limerick lady here, Angie, has one of her several books that she has out is called Liverpool Limericks, and Miss McCartney's Liverpool Limericks and Other Random Irish Haikus. So in your honor, Martin's asking, is it time for a limerick? Yes, indeed it is. In your honor.
I feel a limerick coming on.
We feel a limerick coming on, dedicated just to you. And you're such a rock star. You actually get 2 verses. Most people only get one.
Yeah.
So if you are ready, Steve, if you're sitting comfortably, we shall begin. Are you ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. Steve Postell strums the blues with finesse. His guitar brings both calm and excess. From blues into rock, he grooves round the clock. A true artist you can't second guess.
Second verse.
Steve's pen paints a world full of soul. Each lyric a heartfelt drum roll. From heartbreak to fire, he crafts and inspires a troubadour deep in control. Ta-da!
I hope I can get that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I will email it to you.
I'll leave you with a story that you'll enjoy. So I was the musical director for a big benefit. We had Maroon 5 and John Fogerty and all these great people and Alan Parsons, and we were rehearsing at Center Staging, which is the big rehearsal place in Burbank. Mm-hmm. So I'm rehearsing away, and I look up, and there's a young Sir Paul McCartney watching us play.
Wow. Okay.
And which is sort of a bit of a shock, you know. And I said, well, are you going to sit in with the band, or are you going to join our band? And he looked at me and went, well, I do know Hey Jude.
Yeah, that sounds like him. Yeah, he might know. He might just know that one.
Yeah. Anyway, it was very sweet of him to come in, and that was last year.
Yeah, they always rehearse. He and Brian Ray and the boys always get themselves out to Burbank, and we always make sure Diana out there, who does all the catering, when we know he's going, and we send cheeky Madam here sends Mrs. McCartney's organic teas, so there's some decent tea to drink. As you would. Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you so much, everybody.
It's been wonderful, Steve.
When you rewatch this or rewind it, Steve's websites and everything are across the bottom. Go check him out on Facebook at Steve Postell 1. Bands in Town, the Our House Band, and then the Immediate Family and the Immediate Family Film. I cannot thank you enough, my darling, for spending this time, because I know you're just about to go out on tour.
And when you get back, now that we're neighbors, let's get together.
For a cup of tea.
Yeah. No, I love it down there. We'll definitely do it. That sounds great.
Okay, my darling.
All right.
As long as both of you come, because
absolutely. And we'll dress the same as well.
Please.
Maybe blue this time. You never know. For the blues.
The blues, yeah.
Well, thanks, kids. And we will see you kids all of a sudden next Tuesday on TeaFlix. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to TeaFlix, and check out Dr. Angie's books, Organic Teas and CBD at mrsmccartneysteas.com. Toodle pip.